Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It doesn't come with insults or even a single word. Sometimes the strongest statement is silence. Caitlin Clark, with one decision, proved that. By turning down a $1 million offer from the very man who once dismissed her, she sent a message that shook women's basketball to its core. This wasn't just business, it was personal. And it all started with a dream that was denied. As a kid, Caitlin Clark dreamed of wearing a UConn jersey. For generations, UConn was the mountaintop. It was where legends were made. Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Breanna Stewart. Every young player grew up seeing UConn as the ultimate destination. But when Clark was in high school, that dream came crashing down. Geno Auriemma, the coach who built UConn's dynasty, barely recruited her. In fact, he dismissed her so casually, it almost felt insulting. He later admitted he hardly reached out and even suggested she should have been the one calling him. The arrogance in that statement revealed everything. He didn't think she was worth his time. Looking back, that moment may go down as the most expensive mistake in women's basketball history. While UConn brushed her aside, Iowa opened its doors wide. The Hawkeyes didn't just give Clark a scholarship, they gave her belief. They gave her the freedom to play her game, to take risks, to shoot from the logo, and to lead the program however she saw fit. Choosing Iowa over UConn wasn't just unconventional, it was unthinkable at the time. Iowa was respected but never considered a national powerhouse. But for Clark, it was never about chasing someone else's legacy. It was about building her own. That decision didn't just change her life. It lit the spark of a basketball revolution. Once Clark stepped on the court at Iowa, everything changed. The arena started filling. Her highlights, deep threes, flashy passes, fearless drives, went viral overnight. The TV ratings for women's basketball games exploded. Suddenly, Iowa wasn't just a college team. It was a national movement. And every step of the way, UConn was watching from the sidelines. Geno Auriemma, the man who once shrugged off Clark, couldn't escape her rise. But instead of acknowledging his mistake, he doubled down. He made subtle dismissive comments, always finding ways to chip away at her accomplishments without ever giving full credit. If you followed Auriemma, you know his pattern. He compliments, but only halfway. Every nice word comes with a sharp edge. With Clark, it was constant. He would praise her scoring, then pivot to Paige Bueckers as the real complete player. He would acknowledge her impact, then undercut it with comments about defense or her team's shortcomings. Fans weren't blind. Analysts weren't blind. It became obvious. This wasn't just analysis. This was insecurity. Clark was becoming the face of women's basketball, and Geno couldn't stand it. Things boiled over in 2024 during an interview on the Dan Patrick Show. Instead of sticking to basketball, Auriemma took aim at Clark's fans. He called them delusional. He called them so stupid. It wasn't just a slip. It was personal. In that moment, Auriemma crossed the line. He wasn't only taking shots at Clark anymore. He was insulting the millions of people who had rallied behind her. And if there's one thing you don't do in sports is go after the fan base that fuels the movement, Clark could have clapped back. She could have called him out directly, but she didn't need to. Her game spoke louder than anything she could ever say. In her rookie year in the WNBA, Clark earned Rookie of the Year, made the All-WNBA first team, and finished 4th in MVP voting. 4th, the exact number her fans had predicted. The same number Geno had mocked them for believing. It was poetic. Clark never had to respond. Her achievements did the talking, and Auriemma's credibility crumbled in real time. But even as Clark kept climbing, Geno couldn't let it go. He kept talking about her, trying to spin her rise as part of his legacy. He claimed women's basketball only grew because of people like him, as if Clark was simply reaping the rewards of the system he built, but fans saw through the act. Clark wasn't a passenger on someone else's wave. She was the wave. Every record she broke, every sold-out arena, every rating spike proved she was rewriting the rules in real time. And Geno? He looked more desperate with every interview. Then came the moment that sealed everything. The Unrivaled League, where Geno Auriemma holds major influence, wanted a face of the brand. They needed a star, and there was only one choice. Caitlin Clark. They came with a massive offer, $1 million. For women's basketball, that number was historic. It wasn't just a paycheck. It was a symbol. But Clark said no. She didn't trash Geno. She didn't call him out. She didn't need to. Her rejection was louder than any insult she could have thrown. The same man who ignored her as a teenager was now begging for her as a professional. and she turned her back quietly, decisively, devastatingly. This wasn't just Caitlin Clark's personal revenge. This was the end of an era. For decades, coaches like Geno Auriemma held the keys to women's basketball. They decided who got the spotlight, who was worthy, who would carry the game forward. Clark broke that system. She proved players don't need gatekeepers anymore. She proved the game's power belongs to the athletes, not the old guard. And in one silent, powerful move, just 2 letters, N-O, she showed that the future of women's basketball is no longer in the hands of a dynasty coach. It's in the hands of the players. And Caitlin Clark is leading the way. When Clark rejected the $1 million offer, the media went wild. Headlines weren't about the money, they were about the symbolism. ESPN debated whether Clark had single-handedly shifted the balance of power in women's sports. Talk shows framed it as a David versus Goliath moment. The young star refusing to be controlled by the old dynasty coach. For Geno, it was embarrassing. For Clark, it was liberation. And for the fans, it was validation that she wasn't just playing basketball, she was changing the entire conversation. Clark's refusal didn't just make a statement, it made business sense. By staying independent of Geno's league, she positioned herself for bigger partnerships. Endorsements flooded in. Shoe deals, national ads, collaborations with brands outside of sports. Her name wasn't tied to a single coach or institution anymore. She became her own brand, her own empire, and that was the ultimate revenge. While Geno's power was shrinking, Clark's influence was expanding beyond the court into mainstream culture. What truly cemented this story wasn't just Clark's performance or her choices, it was the fans. Social media exploded after the rejection. Memes roasted Geno, threads celebrated Clark's independence. Hashtags trended worldwide. For years, Geno had treated her supporters as delusional. Now they were louder than ever, controlling the narrative in ways he couldn't stop. Every game, every highlight, every viral clip was amplified by millions who felt like they were part of Clark's journey. It wasn't just her revenge, it was their revenge too. In the end, Clark's story became about more than payback. Yes, she proved Geno wrong. Yes, she exposed the arrogance of an old guard. But her legacy is already bigger than one coach, one league, or even one rivalry. She showed that women's basketball no longer needs permission to be powerful. She showed that the future belongs to the athletes who play fearless and think fearless. And the most shocking part? Caitlin Clark's career is just getting started. Clark's decision didn't just impact her career, it reshaped recruiting across the country. Suddenly, high school stars weren't dreaming only of UConn or South Carolina anymore. They wanted to build something of their own, just like Clark did at Iowa. Programs that were once overlooked started to rise in visibility, proving that one player could elevate an entire university. Geno's monopoly on talent was officially over. Everywhere Clark played, numbers followed. NCAA tournaments with her presence shattered viewership records. Regular season games turned into must-watch television. Networks adjusted schedules to maximize her exposure. The so-called Clark effect wasn't a theory. It was measurable, undeniable, and terrifying for the old guard who realized she was bigger than the system they controlled. For decades, Geno was the loudest voice in women's basketball. Coaches, players, and media figures often echoed his opinions. But after Clark's rise, something changed. Each dismissive comment he made backfired. Each insult toward her or her fans turned into viral backlash. Slowly, the once commanding figure started to retreat. Interviews became shorter. Quotes became safer. The silence itself was proof. Clark had stolen his spotlight without even trying. Clark's influence didn't stop in America. International fans began tuning in, curious about the player who was rewriting the rules. Merchandise with her name sold overseas. Kids in countries far from the US were practicing logo threes, copying her moves. She wasn't just the face of college basketball or the WNBA. She was turning into a global icon, the kind that transcends sports entirely. What makes this story truly powerful is that it's not over. Clark is still at the beginning of her professional journey. More records will fall, more rivalries will form, and more barriers will be broken. And the one thing Geno Auriemma can't do anymore is control her narrative. She's free from his approval, free from his systems, free from his dynasty. The irony is brutal. By ignoring her as a teenager, he created the one player who could end his era. One of the clearest signs of Clark's impact was financial. Ticket sales skyrocketed wherever she went. Merchandise bearing her name outsold established veterans. Even sponsors that once ignored women's basketball began investing heavily because of her presence. She wasn't just a player anymore, she was an economy. And every dollar that followed her was a reminder of what Geno missed when he overlooked her. In gyms across the country, young players started lowering the rims and imitating Clark's deep threes. Coaches noticed a shift. Kids weren't just saying they wanted to play college ball anymore. They were saying they wanted to be like Caitlin Clark. She became more than an athlete. She became a blueprint. For the next wave of talent, her story proved you didn't have to bow to the system. You could redefine it. The most powerful part of Clark's journey is that it still feels unfinished. She's already made history, already changed the culture, already humiliated one of the game's most legendary coaches without saying a single word. Yet, her career is just beginning. The thought of what she might achieve, WNBA titles, Olympic dominance, global superstardom, keeps fans glued to her every step. And for Geno Auriemma, that's the ultimate twist. The revenge story hasn't even reached its peak.